And it did not surprise me at all to read a report recently that millennials all over the world have lost faith in democracy. Delighted to say that the lead author of that report, Dr. Robert Foa from Cambridge University Department of Politics and International Studies, is with me right now. Dr. Foa, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Well, it's very kind of you. Now, Doc, you heard what I said. Am I one of the lucky ones? I'm a baby boomer, right? I'm in my early middle age phase of just over 60 and all that kind of stuff. And literally, here, let me tell you this, Dr. Foa. This is a great stat for you. When I bought my first house when I was 25 and I was a reporter on the Daily Express in Manchester, I was earning £12,500 a year, and I bought my house, a 3-bedroom semi-detached house, for £20,000. I bought my house for less than twice my annual salary. I can see you laughing now. I can see you laughing at that.
I am laughing, yes.
Yeah.
I would love to buy a house in this country for 20 grand.
Yeah.
That would be a fantastic deal. But obviously that's not possible today. And that's a big cause of intergenerational inequality and resentment.
Oh, of course it is. I was given a pension by the Daily Express, which ran for as long as I was there. I was there for 12 years. I then moved on to radio. I was given a pension there as well, believe it or not. So I've been very lucky. So I can understand why young people these days are, feel that they're being badly done to. But it's a big step from that to say we've lost faith in democracy. What's the alternative to democracy in a civilized society?
Well, I think, first of all, I mean, the key thing to say is that, the question that we ask in the surveys is satisfaction with the performance of democracy, not necessarily satisfaction with democracy as a system.
Right.
So, people feel, younger generations, millennials feel that, the system, the institutions are not working for us. And a key part of that is obviously the economic picture. It's people who, can't find work, can't find good work, saddled with debt. And as you say, cannot get a step on the housing ladder.
No.
And it doesn't have to be that way. I grew up in this country. I've lived abroad for about 15 years before coming back last year. And, of all the countries I've lived in, there is no country I've lived in that has a housing situation as bad as we do here.
Is that right? Really?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a crisis of our own making, right? It doesn't take a lot to fix. It doesn't cost. If you think about it, it costs £1 million to buy a house in this country. No, it doesn't cost £1 million to build a house in this country, right? You build a house.
Well, no. To be fair, Doctor, it doesn't cost £1 million to buy a house in this country. You can buy a decent house in most parts of this country for £250,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely, and that is part of the solution to the problem, right? If we had in this country more balanced growth between London and essentially everywhere else, in a stroke, we would fix two of the biggest problems in British society, right? Which is the fact that we have left behind communities in the north of England, and we have this huge intergenerational wealth gap. So just rebalancing growth across this country would already have a huge positive impact.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You see, alongside your report, I read another report saying that the boomerang factor is growing year by year. This, of course, is young people who, even in their 30s, are now going back to live with their parents. How are we going to solve the issue of young people declaring their own independence by having their own bricks and mortar?
Absolutely, absolutely, right. I think that this is an easy problem to fix. We have an artificial housing market in this country. We have a free market in this country for all kinds of goods and services that we benefit from. But we do not have a free market in housing. We have an artificial market in housing in this country. If you deregulated housing construction in this country, such that it was similar to most other countries, in fact, that don't have a housing market like ours, this time next year, you would have cranes from Dover to Dundee, creating good working class jobs in construction and creating affordable housing for the next generation.
Yeah. Well, sorry, why do you say it's overregulated, the housing market? From what I know, my experience of housing is builders go along, they buy a field and they build houses on it, and it costs about 25% to build the house, and they sell it for 3 times that, and they make a great profit, and that's not regulated, is it?
Well, there's the thing, you see. If you can get me, planning permission to build a house, our supervisor, and you're prepared to pay me, £1 million for a house, which is obviously what
Yeah.
down here in London, if you're very lucky.
Yeah.
I'll build you that house and I'll make a big profit on that, right?
Mm.
Just like housing, the construction companies do. But the problem is, I mean, we have a system of housing regulation in this country that, massively gives power to block construction, right? I mean, it gives a lot of power to local communities to block construction. Everybody's happy to solve the problem of the housing crisis as long as the house is being built somewhere else.
Yes.
But obviously, nobody wants houses in their own back door. And that's, I understand that completely as a homeowner. I would feel the same way that, I don't want house prices depressed by more supply coming on in my community.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have to think about what's in the national interest. And these are decisions that, should be taken, nationally, not necessarily by local communities.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Now, there's another problem here, Dr. Foa, which I think I've identified. It's not just housing. There are too many young people coming out of universities with degrees which are absolutely worthless. Therefore, we've flooded the jobs market with graduates. Therefore, we've pushed down the price of their labour. We've had full employment in this country for a number of years up till the COVID-19 thing. And the trouble is, there's too many people chasing too many jobs. You just mentioned the fact that if we had cranes all over the country building houses, we would then have a demand for bricklayers, for plumbers, for carpenters, for people who drive lorries and cranes. Why can't we redirect the economy to allow young people to make their own choice up about what they want to do when they're 16 or 17 and maybe get a skill, like one of the ones I've just mentioned, rather than going on this conveyor belt through university, which ends up nowhere?
Sure. I mean, well, I think, obviously we live in a diversified economy, and there's a place for everybody within that to get a decent job, whether it's in construction trade, whether it's in tech or whether it's in some other field, whether it's working in a cafe. But I think the issue here is, first of all, yes, I think you're right. We do need more skills training in this country, like they have in Germany and other countries on the continent, for example.
Yes.
And I think the second issue is that I think that there are that there can be the opportunities out there for young people to get good jobs. I mean, I think you have a situation in a lot of sectors where, actually, my experience, when I interact, I work in a university and I interact with people who are 5-10 years younger than myself, all I see are people who are skilled with the latest skills, who are hardworking, who are determined, and can probably make a huge positive impact to any company they work for, and dare I say, a bigger positive impact than perhaps some of the more senior, less hungry, less lean members of the workforce.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Now, here's the final question, Dr. Foa. Should we be frightened about a rebellion on the street? Should we be frightened about the fact that all these young people who think they've been disadvantaged, who think they've been written off by current society, will they take to the streets? Will they follow populist leaders? Are we in for a revolution?
Well, the way that democracy works is that, hopefully you take measures before the revolution happens, right? And so, and this is just how democracy works, right? I mean, so in this country, after the Brexit referendum, right, for the first time in a generation, people started talking seriously about the problems of left behind working class communities in the north of England. And even the Conservatives, I mean, they made it their election strategy.
They did.
But I think that, if the outcome of things like, the Corbyn youth quake of 2017 is that the government, whichever party it may be, takes seriously the problems of millennials and the anger and the frustration of younger generations, then democracy is working.
Well, that's good. Well, that's good to know. So what you're saying is we can't expect a riot anytime soon. And as you're an expert, Dr. Foa, thank you very much indeed for telling me that. OK, folks, that was Dr. Robert Foa. He is the lead author of the report from Cambridge University's Department of Politics and International Studies about why millennials, and by the way, I have a huge amount of sympathy for millennials in this day and age, particularly in this country, while millennials all over the world, not just in this country, have lost faith in democracy.